Hi guys, are you facing problems while calculating the ratio analysis and you are confusing about various formulas of ratio analysis? No worry, this video is for you. Welcome to FinBank Academy. Today we discuss about ratio analysis, one of the important topics. What is ratio analysis? Ratio analysis is nothing but a analytical tool. It is analytical tool which interprets various financial variables, and it also read between the lines of financial statements. This is most important one. And there is one more analytical tool is like ratio analysis is nothing but fund flow analysis. This is also one of the important tool, and ratio analysis is also one of the important tools. These two will interrupt the data. Means these two are read between the lines of the financial statements. And what else activities will the ratio analysis will do? It will compare the inter firm comparison and also intra firm comparison. Means suppose how much stock is there, how much sales are going on, what profit we are earning with the previous quarter and this quarter, and also how much current assets we are having with our organization, and how much current ratio is maintained by our organization and our our opponent organization. These comparisons also shall be done by ratio analysis. And also it will helps to planning and forecasting. Suppose you are having very low current ratios, then you should have a plan. What else you need to do in the further quarter to increase the current ratio, right? So these are the uses of ratio analysis. And very important point is it is the relationship between the two or more financial variables, right? Got it. Now also it has some limitations. You all know for everything there will be some limitations or cons section. You also call it a cons. Means what? The first and foremost is it is based on what? Financial statements, financial figures. So easily one can manipulate the financial figures, so we may not get the proper ratios or proper required answers, or proper required results, right? So that is the first con. And second thing is these can be window dress, I discussed here. And the one more point is there is no benchmark for ratios for comparative purposes. This is one most important. There is no benchmark for current ratio, for debt equity ratio, for several ratios. We call it some ideal ratios. Those are not benchmarks, and no benchmarks are decided by any authority. So there is no benchmark. Also, this requires the past data to compare the data. As well, I said it requires a past data. We can't say the for the new firm and new enterprise there won't be a past data. That is also one of the disadvantage of this ratio analysis. Okay, now discuss with the ratios. What are the types of ratios? There are I discussed here four types of ratios, and also there are some ratios: capital ratio and profitable ratio. These I haven't discussed here. I will discuss in later. The first and foremost is what? Liquidity ratio. This is most important. And solvency ratio, turnover ratio, and coverage ratio. Right. So many of us are familiar with some of the ratios here. That is current ratio, quick ratio, and debt equity ratio, and debt turnover ratio, and most important is debt service coverage ratio. Many of us are familiar with these ratios. I discuss what it interprets here, right? The first is liquidity ratio. What it really indicates? It indicates the financial position or liquidity position of the firm, and how it can repay within short time. Means how it can cover the current liabilities effectively. This is what the motto of the liquidity ratio. And solvency ratio, how a firm can erase the debts outside of the firm. That is the solvent ratio. Turnover ratio, how the firm is going good, means how the sales are going on, all these calculated here. Coverage ratio, main is debt service coverage ratio. Suppose if a person comes for the loan, how he can repay, means Water is means water is expenses. We calculate and we decide one ratio. That is what debt service coverage ratio. Right. The first thing, the liquidity ratio. It is the first topic. In the liquidity ratio, the most important ratio is what? Current ratio. We all hear about the current ratio. What is current ratio? It's the current assets by current liabilities. We all know. But before analyzing any ratio, one should familiar with what current assets components and current liability component. Not only current asset, current liability components, one should familiar with balance sheet components. Means, suppose something given like sundry payable. You should know sundry payable comes under which tab? Is current liability, current assets, or term loan liability. And marketable security here is given the value. You should know marketable securities comes under current assets. Like that, you should familiar with the components of the balance sheet. Then only we can derive or we can calculate the ratios. Got it? So I have given one example: inventory 6,000, account receivable 2,000, prepaid expenses 2,000. These three comes under what? Three comes under current assets. And provisions. Provision is nothing but what? It's a current liability. I discussed in the previous video. Provision, sundry payables, and EMI. These three comes under current liabilities. The total current asset is 10,000. The total current liability is 7,500. So the ratio is what? 1.33. And also the ideal current ratio is 1.33. I haven't adjusted it accidentally come here 1.33. 1.33. If it's more than 1.33, like it's 1.5 is to 1, 2 is to 1, 1 is to 1, it may become whatever ratio it can derive. If 1 is to 1 come, we should think before giving a loan. 1.5 is to 1, it's the best. 2 is to 1 is excellent. Got it? But what does that mean? This 1 is to 1, 1, 2 is to 1, 1.5 is to 1. Suppose 2 is to 1 means for 1 rupee of current liability is having 2 rupees of current assets. Got it? 1 rupee of current liabilities is a resource of 2 rupees of current asset. Means very good. Got it? Suppose here 1 is to 1 means 1 rupee of current liability is having 1 rupee of current asset. Means current assets and current liabilities both are similar. In the current assets, there is a one component that is inventory. Suppose the inventory, if the owner is cannot push this inventory into the market, what happen? Their sales will not be happen. Then current liability will be decreased, current asset will be increased. This will decrease the liquidity position of the firm. Got it? So 1 is to 1 is a okay, but below 1 is danger. Above 2, what will happen? Suppose above 2 means what? Suppose 5 is to 1 is there. What does it interprets? For 1 rupee of current liability is having 5 rupees of current asset. It is something fishy, right? So he is somewhat diverting his funds. Means 1 rupee of current liability, he should not have more than current assets. Means some long-term funds or long-term source of funds he is diverting into the short-term funds. That is a fishy. So more also danger, less also danger. Here the main component is inventory. Inventory will play a crucial role. The next ratio is discuss about the inventory only. What's the next ratio? Quick ratio. Quick ratio is nothing but it determines the liquidity position within very short time. In the current ratio, we figure it for 12 months, and that is 1 year. Usually that is our financial period. But in the quick ratio, we discuss only for 2 to 3 months, very short term. So we calculate very short assets, very quick assets. Means the assets which are going to be converted into the cash within short term, 2 months or below 2 months also. So here, I already told you the inventory plays a crucial role. Inventory, we can't say the inventory will be converted into a cash within 1 month, within 2 months, within 3 months, because the sales should be done. So that is why inventory we exclude to calculate the quick ratio. We exclude inventory in the calculation of quick ratio. Also, in the current liability parts, we exclude short-term bank borrowings. so that we can derive what? Quick ratio. Also we call it as acid test ratio. Got it? The ideal ratio is what? 1 is to 1. 1 is to 1 is the ideal ratio for quick ratio. Got it? The next ratio is what? Net working capital. And one more important is cash ratio. I will discuss first cash ratio first. What is cash ratio? This also denotes the extent to which cash and marketable securities are sufficient to meet current liabilities. In the current ratio, we discuss about current assets and current liabilities, and the time period is 12 months. In the quick ratio, we discuss current assets and current liabilities without inventory and without short-term borrowings, and the time period is very quick, that is 2 to 3 months. But in the cash ratio, this determines the liquidity position in the term of cash, and marketable securities only. So here inventory will be excluded. Here some of the current assets and current liabilities components are excluded. Here only cash and marketable securities we calculate. Right? So formula is cash plus marketable securities by current liabilities. Got it? So cash ratio, quick ratio, cash ratio, current ratio, quick ratio, cash ratio, all these about liquidity position only. And net working capital margin, net working capital or margin for working capital. What it indicates? It indicates the borrower's contribution in current asset funding. Means I discuss here margin for working capital. That is nothing but what? The borrower contribution. Margin money is nothing but borrower contribution. The formula is what? Net working capital by total current assets. And here one more important point in this ratio is, as per Tandon committee, that RBI deputy governor, you all know, working capital committee. There is a committee on working capital assessment. As per Tandon committee, the net working ratio should not less than 25%. Should not less than 25%. Got it? See in the while calculating the current ratio, see the example here given here, 10,000 and 7,500. Here 10,000 is current assets, 7.5 7,500 is what? Current liabilities. Here see the current liabilities is 3/4 of current asset. What about 1/4? That 1/4 should be net working capital. That is what? 25%. 25% is nothing but what? 1/4, right? Simple. So as per the balance sheet, total assets is equal to total liabilities, where we discuss the 3/4. The remaining 1/4 we have discussed here. Got it? So net working capital is net working capital ratio is nothing but net working capital by total current asset. So these four ratios are under liquidity ratio. And then now we discuss about the solvency ratio, also called leverage ratio, also called capital structure ratio. What it indicates? It measures the relationship between owner's fund and borrower's fund. Bus. It's all about debt. Borrower's fund is nothing but debt. Owner's fund is nothing but equity. All these ratios are relationship between equity and debt. That is our first ratio, debt equity ratio. Debt by equity. What is debt? Debt is nothing but long-term liability. Right? Long-term liability. By what is equity? Equity is nothing but net working capital. Net working capital, that is capital plus reserves plus surplus. But the tangible net worth, we are talking about tangible net worth. The net working capital nothing but also some intangible assets is in the net working capital. There are also intangible assets, but we are mentioning here only tangible net worth, that is net working capital minus intangible assets. So you all know about intangible assets. I'm not discussing here anymore. Okay, so long term liability by tangible net worth is nothing but debt equity ratio. Also debt equity is known as financial leverage. This is important point. And what are the ideal ratios for debt equity ratio? Actually 2:1 is the ideal ratio. Generally bankers will prefer this ratio. And 1:1 is for large scale industries, 2:1 for middle scale medium scale industries, and 4:1 for small and micro enterprises. Got it? These are the ideal ratios. And the one more ratio is total outside liability ratio. Total outside liability ratio, this is the most important ratio. If total outside liabilities plus tangible by tangible net worth. Debt equity ratio and total outside liability ratio both are the same. But small difference is what? Debt equity ratio deals with long-term liability, means lender exposure. But total outside liability deals with complete outside expense or complete liability. Got it? Here, total outside liabilities in the total outside liability ratio. In the debt equity ratio, the name itself is a debt. Debt is long term liability. Here, long term liability. Here, total liability. Bus. Total liability at the term loan plus current liability, term liability plus current liability by tangible net worth. Got it? And the other ratio is fixed asset ratio. Fix what it determines. Fixed asset ratio is nothing but out of the long term resources, long term liabilities, what percentage fixed assets are creating? That is what fixed asset ratio indicates. Means suppose you have taken long term loan of 1 lakh rupee. Out of 1 lakh rupees, out of 1 lakh rupees, at what percentage you created fixed assets? 80,000 or 90,000. That is what ratios indicates. If fixed asset ratio is greater than 1, means you have taken 1 lakh rupee and you are creating 1.5 lakhs of fixed assets. What does this mean? You are diverting short term funds here. If you use the 1 lakh rupees, you can only create 1 lakh rupees fixed asset only. More than that you can't create. But you are creating 1.5 lakhs. Means the short term loans. Short term is what? Current liabilities. You are diverting current liabilities into the fixed assets. So what we discussed here: current ratio, we discuss quick ratio, cash ratio, net working capital ratio. These four are liquidity ratios. Under solvency ratio, debt equity ratio, total outside liability ratio, fixed asset ratio. These are all come solvency. We have discussed the 7 ratios here. In the next videos, we can discuss the turnover ratio, capital ratio, profitability ratio, and main and important thing is coverage ratios, that is debt service coverage ratio and interest service coverage ratio. We can discuss in the further videos. Got it? So if you like my content, kindly subscribe to my channel Finbank Academy. Please like, share, comment. Thank you and all.